Welcome to This Morning with me, Claire Allen. Today we are talking about social action campaigns, and I have Millie Coker with me, a social action expert. And we'll be talking about three main campaigns: Blackfish, Vote Leave Brexit, and Reading Street Pastors. Okay, so Millie, tell me, who's involved in these actions?
Okay, so in Blackfish, there was a mix of people involved to help create the production. This included orca specialists whose expertise are in these types of animals. They also interviewed the trainers who used to work with the orca whales, which was also really interesting because then you got to see it from their sort of side. They worked with the animals, and they also had experiences of the way that the animals were treated and the way that the trainers were treated by the animals because of how they were being treated. In the Brexit video, the people who were mainly involved was obviously the government, and MPs such as Boris Johnson sort of made the biggest impact. They had their own campaigns. Boris Johnson was someone who really wanted to leave the European Union, and he had a massive campaign all about Vote Leave and how the benefits of leaving the European Union would have on England as a whole. And then Reading Street Pastors, which is obviously a lot smaller in comparison to the Brexit and Blackfish. And then Reading Street Pastors, which is obviously more of a local thing, the people who are involved in that is literally the people who do the job and the people that they're helping.
And how do these social action campaigns change attitudes and raise awareness?
So for Blackfish, it was all about making people aware of how the animals were treated and why they were doing what they were doing to the trainers. So in the last I don't know how long it's been going on for, but for years now, the amount of whales that have killed trainers because these poor animals are being kept in such a confined area. So it was all about people having the right facts and the right information. So that's why they were training that's why they were talking to trainers and they were talking to specialists and everything. So that of course raised awareness for the whales. For Vote Leave, it was sort of to change attitudes and to show that some people think that we don't need to be in the EU and how these are the benefits that are going to come from not being in the EU anymore, such as better schools and more money for hospitals and roads, and there's so many things. And it was just having informative information and informing the audiences about the effects. And then for Reading Street Pastors, a lot of people view Reading Street Pastors as sort of being these really high up Christians who think a lot of themselves and try and force their religion onto you, when in actual fact they're really just here to help. So their video, which is slightly outdated now, just goes out to prove, this is what we are here for.
Right, okay, awesome. And how do you think these social action campaigns change stereotypes and representations of groups?
So for Blackfish, it was a massive stereotype, and the way that SeaWorld and sea life has been presented to the media, to audiences, to the sort of world, is that it's this fun place where they're training orcas and the orcas are in a safe environment and they're healthy and they're happy, which is completely wrong. When all of the trainers have been killed in these accidents, the way that it's then being portrayed in the media is that it's at fault because of the trainer. The trainer's fallen over, they've drowned, they've done something wrong, it's been their fault. Whereas this was a massive eye-opener with all the facts of actually this is what's going on. So it completely ruined the reputation of SeaWorld, because it's been taken as this really happy, lovely place to someone who is completely mistreating animals, and it's complete cruelty. I think for Brexit, I think that a massive deal for it was that the only reason we wanted to leave the EU was that it meant that people wouldn't be living anymore, because one of our major issues in this country is immigration. That's obviously not the case. There are sort of other benefits, if you want to call it benefit, but that's definitely what they were trying to achieve from the video.
Yeah.
And then Reading Street Pastors, obviously, as I said previously, they are viewed as being people who are quite about themselves, when actually they really just want to help other people. And if anything, they help the community, because it means that the police can then focus on sort of not the more important things, but the things that need more attention, so that then the Reading Street Pastors can then help in, give a hand.
And then obviously in the video they were stating that you know, even though loads of people think that they're these Christians who are trying to sort of like pass their faith on to other people, and they're saying actually no, that's not what we want to do, we're just out to help people. We are Christians, but that we're not trying to, you know, pass on our faith.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool. And would you say that these campaigns strengthen communities?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for Blackfish, then they didn't go out, they weren't set out to sort of strengthen a community at all. It was literally just to bring awareness to the issues that were happening. But prior to the documentary coming out, it came out on Netflix, so the types of audiences that they were attracting, it then broke out, and it was like a massive media storm. Everything was on, you know, Twitter and Facebook, so the you know, community of just everyone who cares about animals and how it was happening, and everyone was sort of blinded to it. So in that sense, Blackfish did create a community of people who were then set out to make sure that orcas aren't being treated this way anymore, not just at SeaWorld but absolutely everywhere. For Brexit, I don't think they were looking to build a community, but they were more to change people's opinions and bring people together, because obviously vote leave or vote stay, they're obviously two different things, they want completely different things. But by using the Vote Leave campaign video, they're trying to show audiences that, you know, we're not bigots, we're not racist people, this is what we're trying to do, we're trying to help each other. And by using videos with hard-hitting facts of, you know, there are serious benefits that we are daily, you know, complaining about, whether it's roadworks or whether it's the train systems, we're always complaining. So that was sort of their way of saying, look, we're trying to do something here. And that was sort of their way to strengthen their community. And then Reading Street Pastors is all about the local community, it's all about helping each other. So that really did help to strengthen the community, because it means that their small actions that they're doing each weekend are helping the whole community as a whole.
Nice. And how would you say these social action campaigns provide information to their audiences?
So, especially for things like Blackfish, every single fact is in there, it's 100% a fact. And they also include small snippets of the people who work at SeaWorld completely lying, giving these absolutely false facts about the ages that a whale should live up to, the space. There's loads of stuff that we obviously didn't know, that even the people who worked there didn't know. So by actually giving us all of this information, we've got a much clearer picture of what was going on. For Brexit, again, there's a lot of stuff that people didn't know, because people just were making a vote based on sort of what their mum and dads were saying, and when these extra information is provided, then you're made more aware of the situation. And for Reading Street Pastors, I think it's just how they're viewed. That was sort of the most information that was provided, how they help, why they help, stuff like that.
So would you say that these are campaigns?
I mean, Blackfish was a documentary, and it was just mostly there just to provide information about what was going on. But after it came out, the repercussions of the documentary, it turned into a massive sort of like, people were talking about it, people wanted to talk about it and put their information out there and their opinions. So it was then fueled, and it did turn into a campaign of, you know, let's make sure these animals are being treated right. As for Brexit, obviously that was majorly a campaign, so the video that we had chosen to look into was Vote Leave, but there were videos that said Vote Stay, so they were very argumentative, sort of trying to put the other person in bad light in order to win the vote. And then for Reading Street Pastors, obviously it wasn't a campaign at all, but they are completely supportive of the local police, ambulance service, everything, and the campaigns that they hold, so not necessarily just for them, but in some ways, yeah.
Do these campaigns want to build relationships?
100%. I mean, Reading Street Pastors, that's exactly what their video set out to do. It's set out to help people, recognise them in the streets, just know who they are, and also to not be afraid to go up to them if they do seriously need help, which is, one of the things they sort of specialise in. Blackfish, I mean, they're building relationships between the people who are actually specialise in that area. They have the information, they know exactly what is, sort of needed for that animal, because SeaWorld evidently have no idea. The fact that it was allowed to go on for as long as it has is ludicrous, but now that something is being done about it, relationships are being built. These animals that have been kept in captivity now for, over 25 years, they're being let out back into the wild, things are happening. I mean, sadly, Tilikum, which is sort of the main whale in the documentary has died. In the documentary, Tilikum the whale passed away from pneumonia while he was still being held in captivity. So that was again a major stir in the media, which then meant that the communities came together again. These relationships that have now been formed, so it just became even more important. And Brexit obviously wanted to build relationships with people in England. They want people from Britain to realise, we need to become independent. We cannot be in the EU anymore.
So what good has come from these social action campaigns?
So obviously from Blackfish, people are definitely more aware. SeaWorld is not, it's still a popular place, people still visit there, but at least now they have the facts. So people have been more educated in that area. For Brexit, obviously we did vote leave. So videos like the campaign that we have been looking at worked, which obviously is, that's great for that campaign. So I guess that is good for them. And for Reading Street Pastors, people are more aware since the video about what they do. Their video is more outdated, but I know for a fact they will be making a new one soon.
What techniques have been used?
So the techniques in Blackfish was all hard-hitting facts. It was, this is the truth, deal with it. They also had interviews which were really important with different types of people who provided the information. So that was really good. For Brexit, the techniques that were used in that were just hardcore facts. They didn't actually include any people. It was just all writing. It was quite short and had to just get straight to the point. But yeah, so that's sort of the techniques that they were using. Reading Street Pastors, they had interviews with the people on the street. They also sort of had a segment where they took you out with them. So they took you back onto the streets where this is their job, this is what we do. So it's, not just sat down in an office explaining it, it's this is what we do, this is the impact we're having. So, these techniques definitely worked.
Cool. How do you think these videos are effective?
The Reading Street Pastors video was really effective because we got to see what they do on their jobs, which was great. It also gave us a bit of an insight on who they are as a person.
Yeah.
Because of how they are stereotypes, we got to meet the pastors, which was Blackfish was really effective because of the repercussions it had prior to the documentary, which sometimes is the best part of the documentary. You can have the documentary, people watch it. It doesn't just inform and educate, but it completely changes opinions and changes what's actually happening and solves these issues, which was exactly what sort of happened in Blackfish. Brexit videos campaign was incredibly effective because of course they won the referendum. The video succeeded in gathering a community of people that all wanted the same thing and believed that leaving would be better for the country.
How has it stirred an emotion?
For the Reading Street Pastors, I'm not sure if it necessarily stirred an emotion, just sort of reassured people. So I don't think it really stirred an emotion.
It just gave people made them aware of who they were, so that when they do meet them in the streets, they are more accepting of their help.
Yeah, perhaps the only emotion that you could really think of is sort of relief, because these are just people who do just want to help, and thank goodness that we don't have to go up to police, who can sometimes be quite scary. So that's great. And then obviously with Blackfish, that was extremely emotional. They mentioned how these poor whales who basically speak different languages are being put into a massive square swimming pool for 20 years, split out from their families, taken away, and the ways that they were, taking the orcas from the wild, bombing the waters, separating the adults from the young. It's just completely wrong. And then obviously Brexit. Brexit got people angry from both sides of the campaign. People were completely all for the party that they were going to, that's going to be better for the country. It was extremely competitive. People seemed to think that they were all MPs and they all knew what they were on about.
True.
But their supporters for wanting to vote against what they thought was right, but got angry that other parties and their supporters for wanting to vote against what they thought was right.
So why were these social action campaigns necessary?
So documentaries such as SeaWorld are completely necessary, because without these documentaries and without this information, people are still completely blinded to how these animals are being treated. They're going to SeaWorld, enjoying the show and not realising what goes on behind closed doors. So it was completely necessary for the safety, you know, mentally and physically for the orcas. For the Reading Street pastors, again, their services aren't being used properly if people don't know who they are. So without sort of advertisement of what they're trying to achieve, there's no point of them really being there. And then for Brexit, it was necessary, obviously, you know, as a campaign, you need to fight your side, you need to fight your battle, you need to show people who you are, what you're trying to achieve. And by, you know, using these campaign videos, they're sort of, you know, giving these audiences hard-hitting facts. This is who we are, this is what we're going to do, hop on bandwagon type thing. Yeah.